Hello, my antique-loving friends. It's Gregory here with Old Europe Antique Home Furnishings, and we've got some exciting news to talk about in the world of antique art today. It looks like two previously unrecorded Canaletto Venetian cityscapes will be coming up at auction on December 7th at Christie's in London. It's their Old Masters auction, and these particular cityscapes, or vedute, are of, in my opinion, one of the most romantic, beautiful, intriguing, mysterious cities in all of the world, Venice, Italy. So I want to talk about these two paintings and show you those, and we'll go over a bit about the artist himself right after this. Giovanni Antonio Canal, better known to all of us as Canaletto, was born in the Republic of Venice in 1697, right smack in the middle of the Baroque period. In fact, Vivaldi, the great composer, had been born a mere quarter century earlier. So this was an important period of time for the great masters in Venice. Now, Canaletto was known as an important painter in the Venetian school. He painted cityscapes, or vedute, of Rome, London, and, of course, Venice. But what is vedute? It's an Italian term that translates to views or panoramic views in English. It is often used in the context of art to refer to paintings, drawings, or prints depicting scenic landscapes or cityscapes, typically with an emphasis on capturing the overall view of a particular place. In the art world, vedute can also specifically refer to works that showcase architectural or urban features of a city or landscape. Now, what's interesting is that Italy didn't become a country until the third quarter of the 19th century, so all of this occurred in the Republic of Venice. Now, Canaletto was not content to paint just the actual scenes and views that he saw in these beautiful cities. He also painted imaginary scenes, or capricci. Due to this creative streak, the demarcation between what he actually saw and the imaginary embellishments that he added is not always clear. Now, he's also well known for his use of what we call a camera obscura. A camera obscura is actually the precursor to the modern camera. It was a box or tent in which an exterior image was projected inside. The camera obscuras with a lens in the opening have been used since the second half of the 16th century and became popular as aids for drawing and painting. The concept was developed further into the photographic camera in the first half of the 19th century, when the camera obscura boxes were used to expose light-sensitive materials, film, to the projected image. Now, the use of the camera obscura allowed Canaletto to achieve almost perfection with regard to the proportions and the dimensions of the views that he drew. Now, I did mention earlier that he wasn't afraid to embellish these views with some imaginary details, and he also was not afraid to shift the proportion or the perspective on some of the buildings in the painting in order to achieve the result that he was aiming for. Okay, now one last thing I want to mention before we move on and take a look at these two paintings that are coming up for auction. Canaletto was actually born the son of a painter named Bernardo Canal, hence his mononym Canaletto, which means little canal. So that's an interesting little historical tidbit there. He went on to serve an apprenticeship under his father and with his brother during his youth, which was critical in developing his skills, and they actually worked on designing sets for operas, by Fortunato Celleri, Giovanni Porto, and most important to me, because he's one of my favorite composers of all time, Antonio Vivaldi, who in fact was still living at the time. Finally, let's take a look at these paintings. Actually, as we speak, they are in the process of a world tour, which will take them to New York in just 3 days on October 12th. So if you happen to be in New York, you might be fortunate enough to actually see these paintings before they move on to other locations and then finally to Christie's for the December auction. Now, the first of these paintings is called Venice, the entrance to the Grand Canal, looking west. The two works are believed to have been painted for an English patron for whom Joseph Smith, the merchant collector and later consul in Venice, acted as agent. Records survive of the payments John Russell, the 4th Duke of Bedford, made between 1734 and 1736 to Smith's brother and London agent John Smith for the celebrated Canaletto series at Woburn. The second painting is titled The Molo, from the Bacino di San Marcovi. It has been suggested by London dealer and Canaletto expert Charles Beddington that the current pictures were components of a set of 4 canvases commissioned in 1733 by the Duke of Bedford's sister, Elizabeth, Countess of Essex, and dispatched by Smith the following year. Her husband, William Capel, 3rd Earl of Essex, was appointed ambassador at Turin in 1732. The choice of subjects suggests that Lady Essex may well have seen the two related works already ordered by her brother while these were still in Venice. By 1939, the pictures were owned by Douglas Glass, the only son of James George Henry Glass, who was a distinguished engineer and a director of the Bengal Nagpur Railway Company, whose interest in Italy is reflected in the fact that he died in Naples rather than in his English residence. These paintings are going up for auction as a pair, and they're expected to fetch as much as 10 million British pounds or more. So it'll be exciting to see just how high the price actually goes, and I hope that someone who sees this video ends up bidding on them and winning them so they can make some comments below. But whoever wins them is going to have a considerable war chest in order to pull that off. So before we wrap up this video, I do want to show you a few more of his amazing works, and we'll go over a little bit more general information about Canaletto. With an eye for compositional balance and a feel for dramatic effects, Canaletto typically composed images of recognizable landmarks which he would rearrange in subtle new relationships. That's the capriccio that we were talking about earlier. His images could also be composed, in part, of imaginary architectural and scenic elements. As an heir to the legacy of the great Renaissance masters, Canaletto was admired for his subtle blending of sunlight, shadow, and cloud effects, and his play of light on architectural structures. I think we can see that here. Much of his preparation work was carried out on location rather than in the studio, an artistic predilection that was considered highly unusual for that time. The fine detail in Canaletto's renderings of architectural structures is attributed to his use of a camera obscura, which enabled him to create traceable blueprints on which to build up his finely detailed topographies. Canaletto produced a series of some 30 influential etchings. His drawings on paper were considered exceptionally skillful and sensitive, showing a total command of perspective and luminosity. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for today's episode of Antique Acquisitions. I hope you've enjoyed it, learned a little bit about history, and please do take the time to hit the like button on the video. It means a lot to me, and subscribe to the channel. There will be a lot more videos like this coming up in the near future, and I hope to see you next time.